Good morning. Today we will tackle about the video production principles. So what is a video production? It is basically the entire process of creating a video. Whether it's a short film, a full-length movie, business marketing video, television commercial, music video, or other type of film. The process may vary a little with the specifics, but the overall process is basically the same. So we are going to tackle the video production principles. So here's what you can learn. First, have basic recording and editing skills. So at the end of the discussion, you will have the primary skills in learning about how to edit such video and such recording. So our second objective is to know the basics of composition, recording, and editing from the creative point of view. So you will learn what is the primary features, setups, or parts. Also, you will learn how to record and edit from the creative point of view or the creator's imaginative point of view.
So here are the principles of video production. The introductory principles are, the first one is the framing, shot types, and angles. In visual arts, particularly cinematography, framing is the presentation of visual elements in an image, especially the placement of the subject in relation to other subjects. Framing can make an image more aesthetically pleasing and keep the viewers focused on the frame objects. The goal in framing is often to focus the viewer's attention upon the subject, but the ends and means are ultimately at the discretion of the artist. It is accomplished by manipulating the viewpoint of the image rather than the objects within. Shot types and angles. So there are different shot types and angles in video production. The first one is extreme wide shot. This camera shot is typically an establishing shot that determines your scene's location. These shots reminds us where we physically are, so have this in your back pocket for your location switches. Second one, very wide shot. In a very wide shot, location is still very prevalent, but the subject will also be somewhat visible. Third is wide shot. Wide shots are also known as long shots or full shots. These frames put a more equal emphasis on your subject and their surrounding environment. The next one is the mid shot. The mid shot takes a step closer to your subject. This composition shows body language, gestures, and personality. It's all about them. With this shot, we want to see less of the setting and more details of the actual person. Two shots. Similarly framed to a mid shot. Two shots include two subjects instead of one. Both are given equal stage weight in the frame. Their body language, along with the distance between them, helps convey their relationship. Next is the medium close-up. In between a mid-shot and a close-up, a medium close-up gives a greater detail, but we still see some body language. Typically, medium close-ups depict the subject from the shoulder up. The next one is the close-up. Close-up shots focus on a part of the subject or object. This brings your character's facial expressions front and center, and your audience can easily read their emotional responses.
Shoots.
Then the extreme close-up. The extreme close-up is exactly what it sounds like. The camera shows as much detail as possible. And extreme close-ups also brings a degree of intensity to your scene. You can use it to achieve comedic relief, tension, and heightened emotions. Next one is the over-the-shoulder shot. These camera shots frame a subject by peeking over the shoulder of the person they're interacting with. These are strongest in scenes when two people are engaged in conversation or a passionate fight. And the last one is the POV shot. The POV shot depicts a character's first-person perspective. Most traditionally, your footage is captured as if the camera is the subject's eyes. So the next principle is the basic editing elements. So all the content has been envisioned and captured, and now it's time to piece it together. There's quite a few important elements to post-production that need to work together in order to make your video really work. Here are the 7 most important key elements of post-production to pay attention to before releasing your video online. So, the 7 key elements of basic editing of your post-production of your video. First one is the rough cut. Before anything else, edit together your visual to create the rough cut of your video. This is where you score through all your footage, categorize it, and start selecting which shots you want to use to assemble the video. When you have a rough version of your video put together, you have what's called an assembly edit. You don't need to add any music or special effects just yet, though you can edit to a temp track if your video has no dialogue or voiceover. Second one is the picture lock. Once you have a rough cut of your video, the next step will be to achieve a picture lock. Picture lock is the stage in the post-production process where all of the shots have been locked into the proper order, essentially locked in place. In a traditional movie production, this means it's ready for the sound and visual effects editing teams. However, if you're creating your own video, you're likely to change things after adding music and voiceover, especially when sensing the two. Next up is the sound mix. Now, you can begin the sound mix, where you edit together different audio tracks for your video. This is also done through video editing or sound mixing software. The different sound elements of video might include dialogue, where featured actors or interviewees speak on camera. Sound effects, like a doorbell or dog barking, added after the filming is done. Music, in the background of what's happening on your screen, and voiceover where someone off camera talks over the images of your video. Now it's time to add your visual effects. By now, you should have already mapped out where you want your visual effects to go in the pre-production phase. If done correctly, you storyboarded these shots and planned for where the effects will go during your production day. If not, it's still possible to add effects after the fact, but it can often be tricky and limiting when added in late. Next is lower third. If you watch any news broadcast, documentary or interview, you are already familiar with the lower third. It's text that's added onto an image or shot position in the lower third of the screen. These lower third titles are used to provide contextual information, whether it's the name of a new location, a person's occupation, or other relevant additional information. For example, in an interview, the lower third will usually feature the name of the person being interviewed, as well as their relevant role or job title. And finally, when all your visual effects and lower third titles have been implemented, it's time for color correction. Color correction is the process of altering the color of the light in each shot with digital filters so each shot matches one another. These corrections include fixing exposure problems where too much light is in one shot and too little light is in another, or white balance issues where the color of the light just doesn't match. And the last step is adding any additional title or end cards. End cards are a title graphic placed at the end of your video. You should be familiar with the concept of end credits, as filmmakers use them at the end of each film to give credit to everyone who worked on a film. End cards in digital videos are similar, but usually promote the brand in question. They're not necessary, but may be a nice way to remind the viewer of your brand. The third principle for the introductions of video production is the editing space and timing. Film editing is the process of limiting the length of a film or video. If a piece of film is cut off at the front and the back by the editor, this is called timing. When the settings trimmed in this way are put together, the pacing is created. Films are not nailed together with a hammer but intelligently assembled and ideally screwed together in an extremely artistic way. Film editing goes far beyond the pure, so-called cutting. Understood as a montage, it also encompasses essential aspects of image design such as timing and pacing. Timing and pacing create the rhythm of the film. This in turn follows the director's and editor's interpretation of the plot lines. The next principle is the action axis, the position of camera, interframe, and insert. So we go to an interframe. An interframe is a frame in a video compression stream, which is expressed in terms of one or more neighboring frames. The inter part of the term refers to the use of interframe prediction. This kind of prediction tries to take advantage from temporal redundancy between neighboring frames, enabling higher compression rates. In film, an insert is a short part of a scene as filmed from a different angle and or focal length from the master shot. Inserts cover action already covered in the master shot, but emphasizes a different aspect of the action due to different framing. An insert differs from a cutaway, as cutaways cover action not covered in the master shot. There are more exact terms to use when the new inserted shot is another view of actors. Close up, headshot, knee shot, two shot. So the term insert is often confined to views of objects and body parts other than head. Often inserts of this sort are done separately from the main action.
The next part of the introduction for the video production basic principles are the following: continuity, uncut, camera motion, frame length, time and space, linear and non-linear editing, rhythm and pace, and the last one is the audio footage. When we say frame length, time and space, it is composed the complete moving picture. It is the persistence of vision blends the frames together, producing the illusion of moving image. Then, it is used as a unit of time so that it will last to 6 frames. Normally, 24 frames are needed for 1 second of film. The size of film frame may vary depending on the film format or the motion produced film format. Okay. The next is linear and non-linear editing. When we say non-linear, it is a non-destructive process. It is achieved by loading the video material into a computer from analog or digital tape. It is also allows the operator to cut, copy, and paste scenes in any order and make any changes that the operator wants. And the new file can be outputted to a video type attached to an email or can be posted to the web. And the linear is a destructive process, means a process scenes are copied from one video tape to one another using two tapes such as VCRs. And then in linear editing, there is an disadvantages. the advantages of this is that this method, it is not possible to insert or delete scenes from the new tape without recopying all the subsequent scene. Rhythm and pace. When we say rhythm, it is created by a series of beats and cannot be determined by one or two consecutive cuts alone. Then, it is determines the speed of the piece of tune. In setting the pace, it is very vital for the storytelling aspect and for establishing the general stylistic feel of film. And then, it does not mean moving at an exact measure at all time. Knowing to cut out a certain shot into the next to create a dynamic pace and flow of sequences, it is the matter of instinct. The last one is the audio footage. It is the collective all audio recordings that depict or being recorded.
Under the video production principle is the shooting techniques in practice. So there are different subtopics, and those are: number 1, shooting, lighting, and sound techniques. Number 2, optical sensors and lens system. Number 3, audio sensors and acoustic. Number 4, operating with camera. And the last one, number 5, is scenography. So let's go to shooting, lighting, and sound techniques. So in shooting, you should consider different factors such as location, camera position, lighting, and audio. So here are some tips on how to shoot video like a professional videographer. So the first one, shoot steady video. So a tripod is an easy answer for producing steady video. However, you should not be dependent on it. You should try to shoot steady video without using a lot of gear. Number 2 is produce creative shots. So you must learn to play with angles and perspective in order to produce interesting video. Try experimenting different angles by shooting above and below your subjects. Practice widescreen videos. So in shooting, try using widescreen format such as a 16:9 ratio. Then number 4, avoid unnecessary zooms and pans. So if you're recording an action scene, let the motion that is happening naturally dominates your video. Stop yourself from adding random zooms and pans, which distract the action. Then number 5, get good results when shooting outdoors. Just shoot with the sun at your back so that you can get better results. Time of day and weather should also consider in shooting your video. The number 6, prepare for indoor video shooting. So adding light is ideal indoor. If that is not possible, check out the available lighting sources. If you're shooting a video of people, get as much light in their faces as you can. So, those are the tips on how to shoot video like a professional photographer. Let's go to lighting. So, lighting techniques are essential to filmmaking because they add depth to any story you tell. Many cinematic lighting techniques can filter or bounce light or even change its color temperature. There are 13 film lighting techniques. So the first one is the natural lighting. So natural lighting techniques are defined by utilizing the light that is already available in whatever location you have choose. Number 2, K lighting. So a K light is the primary light source of the scene. It is the most intense and direct light source. Generally, the K light will illuminate the form of the subject or actor. The number 3, so high K lighting. So high K lighting is a style of lighting for film, television, or photography that reduces the lighting ratio in the scene. In the first day of film, this was done to deal with the high contrast, but now it is used by filmmakers to adjust the mode and tone of the scene. The number 4, low K lighting. So low K lighting is a filmic lighting style that uses a hard source to encase your scene in shadow. Low-key lighting wants contrast and blackness. Then number 5, fill lighting. So a fill light cancels out the shadows created by the K light. A fill light is placed on the opposite of the K light and usually not as powerful as the K light. Then number 6, backlighting. So a backlight hits an actor or object from behind. It is placed higher than the object. Backlights are used to separate an object or an actor from a background. They give more shape and depth. Backlight helps the frame feel three-dimensional. The number 7, practical light. So things like lamps, candles, or even television set are what we call practical lights. Most of these things are added to the set to light the corners or faces. The number 8, hard light. So a hard light is a harsh soaring of light that can be created with a direct beam from a light source or from sunlight. This kind of lighting creates shadows and harsh line. You can use it to draw attention anywhere in the frame, especially in the subject. So it can also create silhouettes and highlights. So number 9, soft light. This one is tricky. Soft lighting is not a strict definition of a light source. Soft lighting is an aesthetic used by cinematographers to illuminate shadows and to create subtle shades of light from exterior sources. Number 10, bounce lighting. You can bounce light from the sun, lamps, or any film lighting kit to indirectly highlight a subject within the frame. Using a bounce light, it creates a larger area of evenly spread light. If executed in the right way, bounce light can be used to create much soft light, fill light, top, side, or even backlighting. The number 11, side lighting or chiaroscuro lighting. Side lighting refers to the light that enters the frame from the side to highlight a person or object. These parallel lights provide a faint feel. They are often used to provide drama and mood to the scene, particularly in the genre of film noir. Number 12, motivated lighting. So motivated lighting is a technique that wants to imitate natural light sources. That means it is to stand in for sunlight, moonlight, street lights, and even car headlights. You can use flags or bounces to help create them and alter them to a natural appearance. Number 13, ambient light. Unless you are shooting in a pitch black night or in an artificial space, there will always be some sunlight or lamplight or overhead light that seeps in. This light that present is known as ambient light, especially when shooting outside or near windows. So let's go to sound techniques. So sound play a huge role in setting the scene, communicating the narrative and letting you know how the characters are feeling. When recording sound in the field, keep in mind that the environment is going to compete with your scene, meaning noise from your environment will also be recorded and mixed in any dialogue you may be trying to record. So, consider location when you are planning your shoot. So let's go to optics, optical sensors, and lens system. So film lens, also known as CineLens or cinema lens, is a high-end camera lens for cinema cameras or videocam recorders that filmmakers, cinematographers, and videographers use to make film and digital projects. Film lens contains a series of glass plates that bring exterior light through the camera's viewfinder to a film strip or digital sensor. So there are three characteristics of a film lens. The first one is the focal length. It is a distance measured in millimeters between the camera lens and the camera's digital sensor, which records the image. Cine lenses with smaller focal lengths have wider angles of view, while larger focal lengths have a narrower angle of view and show less of the scene. The number 2, T-stops. The amount of light that passes through the cine lens is measured in increments called transmission stops or T-stops. Then number 3, aperture. The aperture or size of the opening in the lens or iris also affects the image that the cine lens can capture. As with focal length, larger apertures create a shallow depth of field, which is the amount of focus in the image, while the smaller aperture result in a greater depth of field and more focus. The widest aperture sitting on a lens is called maximum aperture and is built for a low light situation. So there are two primary types of camera lenses for cinematography and photography. So the first one is the frame. Frame lens has a fixed focal length, so filmmakers must physically move the camera closer toward or away from their subject to change the angle of view. This types of lens is also known as varifocal lens, meaning its focus changes as it zooms. A cine frame lens is typically lighter than a zoom lens but allows for less creative control over zooming. The number 2, zoom. A zoom lens allows cinematographers to change the focal length and angle of view by zooming in and out the zoom ring of the lens body. So zooming allows the cinematographer to achieve everything from a wide angle shot to an extreme close-up. A popular choice of filmmaker is the CineZoom lens that allows filmmakers to change the zoom range without losing focus or image quality. Zoom lenses typically contains more glass than frame lenses, which make them heavier but allows for greater versatility. The next one is audio sensors and acoustics. So audio or sound sensor is defined as a module that detects sound waves through its intensity and converting it to an electrical signals. On the other hand, acoustic wave sensors use mechanical or acoustic wave as its detection mechanism. As the acoustic waves propagates through or on the surface of the material, any changes to the characteristic of the propagation path affect the velocity and or amplitude of the wave. Changes in velocity can be monitored by measuring the frequency or phase characteristic of the sensor and can be correlated with the corresponding physical quantity being measured. Then, number 4, operating with camera. So, cameras function by capturing light from the visible spectrum.
Balik.
Cameras function by capturing light from the visible spectrum as well as the other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. This is controlled by only allowing light into the recording chamber through a hollow tube called the aperture. This light is then focused onto the recording device by the use of a lens. Lights entering the aperture is controlled by a shutter, usually within the lens mechanism. It controls the length of exposure. So there are basic video camera operating techniques. The first one is to use the wide-angle lens. The wide-angle setting is easier to focus. You will not have difficulties if you are on a wide shot or because wide-angle lenses have a large depth of field. This means almost all of your picture is in focus automatically. Number 2, tip the sun at camera's back. Then number 3, take a variety of angles of the same action. You can do this by using multiple cameras or by repeating the action and placing the camera in a different spot each time. Then the last one is scenography. Scenography is a practice of crafting stage environments or atmosphere. It is a combination of technological and material stage craft to represent and produce a sense of place in a performance or video.
Good morning, Mom. Good morning, classmates. I am Jesseline Babuaya from the Group 2, who we had assigned to take a report on basic principles of video production. So, my lesson topic is the editing techniques in practice in working with video editing software as a part of the basic principles of video editing. Before jumping to editing techniques in working with video editing software, I also want to share with you guys some tips if you have planned to be an editor. So let's get started. So first on the list is edit a lot. Practice, practice, and practice. As we all know, practice makes it perfect. You can learn through watching tutorials videos and get it to work while watching. Try some editing random videos or footages. You have to try some new skills. The second is the edit with purpose. It is important to edit videos when you have got a purpose that eventually be seen by others. Like upload your finished product in social medias like Facebook, Instagram, and get some feedback from others. The third on my list is be a storyteller. Being an editor is not just cutting a bunch of shots and footages. It is a storytelling type. You are editing videos to share or bring messages to the audience. I think that's it on my list, and the tips that I mentioned is not the only thing to remember. There are lots of it. In fact, the truth is, it depends on your preference. So now, let's tackle some editing techniques to practice working with video editing software. 1. Choose the right software. There are a bunch of advanced video editing software or apps out there. But don't just blindly rush to get your hands on the latest and most advanced app or software. The first step towards video editing is choosing the right software for you. Most video editing software usually offer everything you require to make a standard video edit. Video editor prefer their editing software based on their ease of use, digital interface, and the features. The key here is to determine what software works for you and your video editing techniques. Second, use a faster computer. Of course, having an incredible computer doesn't necessarily make you a great video editor if you are not consistent with your work. But a faster computer will, however, empower your skills and to focus more of your time on the footages or shots you are trying to edit or narrate. Here's what you need to keep in mind while getting a computer. Get an SSD, higher RAM, graphic cards, and the most important is the fast processor. So the third techniques is use keyboard shortcuts. If you are actually serious about saving some time while working on video editing projects, you should figure out how to use those keyboard shortcuts to maximize your time. Next is the color correct your clips. Most editors primarily do two things. One is color correction to ensure that the colors of your footage are uniform in each scene. Second is color grading to give your video a different touch. Next in line is don't overuse effects. Too much effects may do more harm than good. Besides, it can distract the viewers and might make your video look tacky or overwhelming. So, use the effects only when they will add a meaning to touch to your video. Edit for a story. You can use storyboard during the video production. Grab the opportunity to make your video aesthetically pleasing and dramatically compelling to evoke just the right emotions and deliver the intended message of the story you are editing. Then next is the select good music. Before you consider using just any music, remember that perhaps the safest option is to get music from royalty-free music provider. Don't only focus on the visuals, as the music plays an equally important role in how your video turn out. Other is remove distractions. Clear out your space. The tools and the browsers on the same screen as your video editing software can pull you away from the task at hand. Remove any possible distractions and focus entirely on your video editing. Next is wrapping up. You don't really have to be a video editing superstar to deliver professional quality videos. You just improve your techniques and follow some tips for editing, and you will get to amaze people with your creativity. That's all with my report, and thank you and God bless.
We are done with the basic principles of video production. Now let us proceed to the target group. First, we have the content creators. So what is a content creator? A content creator is responsible for providing information and materials across any platform or channel. They usually target a specific end user or audience in a specific context. A content creator can contribute in any format: blogs, news, image, video, audio, email, social updates, and other related content. Now, let us proceed to technicians working in broadcasting companies. So, who are the people that work in broadcasting companies? Next is technicians working in broadcasting companies. So, what does a broadcast technician do? Broadcast technicians, also known as broadcast engineers, set up, operate, and maintain equipment that regulates the signal strength, clarity, and ranges of sound colors for radio or television broadcast. Broadcast technicians also use computer programs to edit audio and video recordings. Next is local station employees. There are common jobs that belongs to local TV stations, and that are: first is a camera operator. A camera operator records footage for films, TV programs, music videos, commercial, and other content. The daily tasks of a camera operator are: first is discussing shooting requirements and filming and editing techniques with directors and producers. Second, helping production crew members set up the production space and filming equipment. The third one is discussing how to achieve the director's vision with lighting and technical crews. Fourth, framing and capturing camera shots for production as directed. Fifth is shooting with cameraman, camera equipment, and technology to enhance productions of values. The last one is helping the camera team break down and organize filming equipment. And lastly, multimedia editors and journalists. So what is a multimedia editor? A multimedia editor is primarily responsible for managing our website, including generating, editing, and uploading content, and for enhancing its digital presence and outreach. The role also requires working across the medium of print and video as when required, and managing corporate social media profiles. The multimedia journalist, its job is to create and publish news, feature, and opinion content in print publications on our websites. Frequently, multimedia journalists design graphic elements that are incorporated into longer pieces. For example, a multimedia journalist may determine that an infographic or slideshow will engage viewers for a specific story. The journalist uses the research and determine the flow of information within that graphic, frequently working with an illustrator or graphic artist to combine text and image.